When Donald Trump speaks, the world listens.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition.
Yesterday, the US indicted the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife on narco-terrorism after an early morning raid. Now, Donald Trump did not pull any punches, and he made it clear it was about drugs and primarily oil.
We are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so.
Donald Trump vowed to use the Venezuelan oil to make the country great again. Venezuela is the #1 oil-rich country of the world. Yet, despite this, under Maduro, the country was in economic freefall, and dare you criticise his regime, you risk disappearing forever. Maduro had to go, and it was a long time coming. In an interview on Fox News, Donald Trump said that Maduro wanted to negotiate in the final days before the US forces captured him, but the American president said that he rejected the offer. "I didn't want to negotiate," he said. "I said, nope, we got to do it." Donald Trump, a decisive leader who does what he says he's going to do, did what he promised, and Maduro and his wife will face the wrath of American law in the US. But what was the response of our hapless government?
The Prime Minister's been very clear that we did not recognise the presidency of President Maduro. That's why the UK government sanctioned him and has long called for a peaceful transition to a democratically elected president in Venezuela. On the question of American operations, it's not a question for the UK as to whether America should undertake its operations or not. It's an independent, sovereign question of the American administration. It's not for the British government to provide a running commentary on the actions of other countries in that way.
Keir Starmer said Britain will shed no tears and...
Well, I want to establish the facts first. I want to speak to President Trump. I want to speak to allies. As I say, I can be absolutely clear that we were not involved in that. And as you know, I always say and believe we should all uphold international law. But I think at this stage, fast-moving situation, let's establish the facts and take it from there.
So whilst the rest of the world are pressing on, making their countries great again, cherry-picking so-called international law, the bits that work for them, we are following it to the letter. We've ditched the Chagos Islands on an advisory, which I'm pretty sure we could have ignored. We've given it away to rent it back. Why? And despite the writing on the wall that net zero is a foolish exercise of deindustrialisation that is clearly making us poorer, resulting in high energy costs, more household debt and constricting growth, which even the EU are backing away from, our government are pressing ahead regardless. Councils are cancelling local elections, they say, because they are reorganising. But why should they get another year in office, avoiding being thrown out by, I suspect, Reform UK? How convenient for them to avoid this prospect. It should be down to whoever is newly elected to carry on with this if it is needed. Dictators avoid elections. And our government, despite Brexit seem to want to align back with the EU and make even closer ties, even though the EU right now is clearly in decline. And don't get me started on the boats. Trump dealt with illegal immigration, which he says is now zero. You see, I wouldn't mind so much if Sir Keir Starmer and his clan actually did what they promised. I wouldn't like it, but at least I'd know where I was with them. But our government is using its huge majority to dictate policy, much of which was not in their manifesto, to steamroll the British people into submission. Even on Mumsnet, Labour voters are turning their backs on the party. Frankly, the Labour government are behaving like a dictatorship, and there is no effective opposition to stop them. I'm sure that there are many in this country that would love to see a Trump-style coup on Sir Keir Starmer.
This interruption is brought to you by ExpressVPN and their New Year deal. New Year, new VPN. And a huge saving of up to 80% if you act now. You're busy planning how to get in shape, but the hackers are planning how to get into your accounts. ExpressVPN locks down your connection so you can start the year protecting your data. This offer ends on the 7th of January, so scan the QR code or click the link in the description now.
So I'm joined now by political commentator Sebastian Salek, who's live. Sebastian, so your thoughts first, ultimately, on what's happened in Venezuela. Do you think that Donald Trump has done the right thing?
Well, only time will tell. I think the Prime Minister is right, really. We need to wait and see what's happened even between this morning and now. New reports have come out, Venezuelan officials saying that civilians were killed. That certainly didn't seem to be the case when this first happened, and they said it's a clean strike, nobody's been harmed. So it is a picture that is really changing by the minute. And we're going to have to wait for that to crystallise before we can make a real firm assessment on whether he has done the right thing or not.
I think it would have been difficult to not have some collateral damage. I hear that, and it is a real shame that people got caught in the crossfire. I can imagine a strike like that is quite difficult to be exactly precise, and that may cause some sort of upset in Venezuela, as I would imagine. But overall, it does sound like the people in Venezuela, and even the lady that was on earlier, she worked with the charity in Venezuela. They were mixed blessings, in a sense, pleased that Maduro's gone. They have put up with a few decades of his very dangerous and awful regime.
Yes, he's only been Prime Minister since recently, but you're right. Look, he wasn't a legitimate president. There were many who were very, very unhappy with him being there. The UK didn't recognise him. So it is a good thing that he's gone, that's for sure. The question is around the methods that were used, and it's not entirely clear exactly how it was carried out yet. So that is what's going to be under scrutiny when we come to look at international law, whether it was applied correctly. It is more around how this happened, not the end result necessarily.
You don't think so? A lot of people parroting the whole international law business, but Trump would probably argue that he was protecting his country from what was going on in Venezuela. He talks about the drugs that were coming into the country, and he also talks about oil, which, of course, the Americans had, and then the president came and then sort of took all those reserves from the Americans and then ran it into the ground.
Yeah, look, I think you've got to be careful with international law. It's a very nebulous concept. There's no world police, as it were. It's very easy to break. It's very hard to interpret. Not like domestic law might be, which is sometimes, you could say, a little bit more clear cut. But the risk is when you start to have a flagrant regard for international law, like Russia does and North Korea and some others, you then start to see your credibility erode on the world stage. And you also send a message. If you're a country like America, which is very big, very respected, and you start to show a lack of respect for international law, you set an example. And what we don't want to see is Russia going further into Ukraine, China going after Taiwan. That would be really, really troublesome for the global stage. And it would end up in a much bigger mess. There was a reason it's there to start with, and it has helped steward a largely peaceful period post-1945. So if it is working, as it generally has, let's not mess with it too much, I would say.
A lot of people might argue that it's actually sent a message to those countries to say, don't mess with us, really, and that we will take whatever steps are necessary, rather than it looking like a weakness. It looks like a show of strength.
I don't know. If I were Xi right now, I would be feeling pretty emboldened and pretty entitled to go and take territory that I saw as my own, on the basis that I could say, look, the US has done the same. So it really is, I think, maybe a bit of a mixed blessing for the world. And yeah, I'm slightly concerned how this is going to play out.
And Sir Keir Starmer's government, they don't really have any sway or any real control in any of this, do they? They've absolutely got nothing to do with it, really, have they?
No, nothing to do with it. It seems like it was the US acting alone. They didn't tell anybody, which you can understand. If it's a secret strike like this, the best thing to do is to keep it stumm. And it clearly worked. They took everybody by surprise. I woke up, as you did and many others, to a remarkable set of push alerts yesterday morning as this story unfolded. So I think it was probably sensible that they didn't tell people that they were doing it if they wanted it to be a success. And personally, I feel like at this stage, probably a good thing the UK doesn't have its fingerprints on it. We've seen what happens when the UK gets involved in foreign wars. Doesn't always end well. it would be nice to stay out of another one, frankly.
And a lot of people might look at that and think, crikey, because they're a bit sick of Sir Keir Starmer. He seems to be coming up with things that weren't in the manifesto and then just pressing ahead with them as much as he can and as quickly as he can. For example, digital ID cards, that was never talked about. Suddenly it's become a thing, and now they're trying to press ahead with it. There's been a lot of objection. A lot of people saying that actually he's behaving a little bit like a dictator with his huge majority.
He's democratically elected, both as the leader of the Labour Party and as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So I don't think there's any element of Starmer's behaviour that could be described as dictator-like.
Well, you can be democratically elected and then you go off-piste. So if you've been democratically elected to do X, Y, Z, and then you go and do A, B, C, which you weren't elected to do, but you've got a massive majority, then there's very difficult for people to oppose you. So I think there's a democracy, and then there's a moment where you've stepped away from that and started to do exactly what you want, away from what the British public have voted you in for.
Well, remember, though, that Starmer still operates within a democracy. So if he does something that is horribly unpopular and completely not what was in the manifesto, he will pay the price for that at the ballot box, and he knows that. So there are limits to what you could do as a democratically elected leader. Now, I think with something like digital ID, he will take that step by step. He will consult. He will make sure that it is something that the country wants before going ahead with it. And look, personally, I think that we overhype this a little bit. It's really about making sure that we can interface with the state better, that we can get what we need from the government, from councils, in the digital world we live in. We use this kind
but he wasn't really. That's a big.
It makes sense to do it for the government.
But that's a big change. He wasn't elected for that at all. He just brought that in. He just talked about bringing it in, and suddenly we're all talking about it. And the other thing is, of course, just very quickly, the council elections. Now, I know that the Labour government say, yeah, you do what you like. We're not in charge of that. You can decide when you have the elections. And they are saying that because we're doing a sort of rearrangement into unitary councils and all that, that's why they've extended it. But other people might look at that more cynically and say, well, yeah, but it seems that you're doing that because you probably know that you'll be unseated by Reform UK and you don't want that. So it's very convenient.
Yeah, but when you look at the numbers, I think that argument starts to crumble quite a lot. Of the councils that are being asked whether they want to delay elections, remember, the government isn't telling them, it's asking them.
No, we know that, yeah.
About 60 of those. Within those, only 18 have a Labour majority. So, look, if I were a conniving Machiavellian Labour advisor and I wanted to dismantle democracy, I probably wouldn't do it by offering 18 Labour councils the opportunity to delay their elections. There are probably bigger ways that you could do your evil deeds and dismantle democracy.
Well, there's a lot of people who'd be looking at that saying that is just the start. Sebastian Selleck, a pleasure. Thank you very much. He's a political commentator.